Hey everyone, this is Sahil again, and today we're going to look at a very interesting game. And we're going to step into the shoes of a grandmaster who found some amazing moves over the board, some creative solutions to all his problems, and how he was able to cause his opponents a lot of problems, and his opponent could not find the correct solutions over the board. And his moves are going to train us, are going to improve our creative ability, which is going to of course show in our games and also in other aspects of our life. So let's begin with this very interesting game. Let's begin with this interesting game. And d4 was played, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop e7. So this move order is basically played to prevent the exchange variation, or let's say not allow white to get the favorable version of the exchange variation of the queen's gambit decline. If black were to play knight f6, then white can takes, and then he can play bishop g5, and he gets the best version where the knight is still on g1 and he has the option of playing later on f3 and e4, where knight e2 has already been played. So instead black plays bishop e7 to kind of tempt white into playing knight f3, and then white doesn't have the dangerous plan with knight e2 and f3. So here white just captures on d5 anyway and plays bishop f4. Now this is another way to kind of play the position. People who prefer the exchange variation kind of go for this. c6, e3, and now black technically wastes a tempo with bishop d6, because anyway usually in this position, even if the bishop was on g5 and the knight was on f6, black would often even just play knight h5 and knight f6 back just to exchange these two bishops. But this is not a really bad plan for black. Bishop d6. Now bishop takes, queen takes, and bishop d3. So basically white is developing all his pieces, and he basically wants to just kind of quickly develop all his pieces and then later on try to think of a plan. He has many options. He could of course first of all go for the classic plan with rook b1 and then b4, b5, or he could also kind of try for something else. So there are many options. Here knight e7 was played. The idea is to basically play bishop g5, and then black would ideally like to exchange the light square bishops, because this is something which is very an important piece for white here. So white plays queen c2. That makes a lot of sense to control the f5 square once more so that there is no bishop f5. And black plays knight d7, knight f3, and knight f6, and white plays knight e5. Now the plan for white is to basically play f4 and then sort of castle, and then he will have this amazing knight on e5. And if you're black, usually this is a good move to remember. Whenever white goes knight e5, you immediately go knight g4 and you basically threaten this knight on e5. Now obviously f4 is not possible, and even if it was, it's usually not the best systems, let's say, for white to play it immediately. If black waits for a few moves, then white is usually prepared. So white has to take on g4, black takes, and white castles. And now here black plays bishop h5. In hindsight, maybe he should have kind of searched for a good haven for his king, and it's hard to suggest a move for sure, but I think what he played, bishop h5, kind of gives white an interesting idea. e4, so white sacrifices the pawn, takes, and now black has to decide what to do with the queen. Not capturing the pawn does not really make things simpler for black, so he just captures the pawn, and now knight g3. So the knight attacks the bishop, and it kind of gets away from the e file where white's rook would like to go. So if black were to play bishop g6 here, then he takes, and rook e1, and suddenly the black king cannot castle and the knight is pinned, and then you can pretty much imagine rook a d1 or even just doubling on the e file. This can turn out to be very bad for black. So he just plays bishop g4 to have the option of bishop e6 and rook e1, bishop e6. So white just plays bishop f5 to break this pin, and if black were to castle here, then white can play rook a d1, queen f6, takes, and rook d7. So again, white has got his rook to the 7th rank, and then this looks at least slightly better for white with his weak pawn on e6, and white is definitely going to win his pawn back at the very least, and will have a slight advantage, especially with a slightly weaker black king, because the e6 pawn is going to fall and then this diagonal will be weak. So black preferred to kind of castle queen side here, which does make some sense. Takes and rook takes e6. Now knight d5. The knight on d5 has a solid outpost. It cannot be pushed away with the pawn. Knight f5, queen f4, g3, queen c7, and rook a e1, 6, and knight d4. So when I was looking at this game, I for a second felt that maybe knight e3 could be played, but then knight b4, if you play queen e2, knight d3, and then this rook is kind of stranded on e6, and then the rook on e1 is again attacked. You have to move this, and then black can attack this kind of shaky rook on e6. So this does not feel correct to me. So maybe knight d4, king b8, and now rook 6 e5. So white vacates the e6 square for his knight, and now queen b6, knight e6, and knight b4. So black attacks the queen and queen e2. So now we come to the critical moment of the game. Black plays the move knight to d3. So I'm going to leave this position in front of you. It's your move. What do you think white should play? If you are an ambitious player, I highly recommend putting this position over a board and trying to find the correct solution by even giving yourself 15 to 20 minutes. This is not easy at all, but if you're able to find it, it will definitely improve your understanding of the game. And of course, as a hint, if you would like to listen to it, if not, you can pause the video already and try to find the solution. You have to try to understand how white can keep winning chances alive. When you calculate these variations, you'll find plenty of drawing variations, but you have to find a way to pose problems to black and find the only way to kind of push black here. So you can pause the video and think for a while. Okay, so I hope you thought here. And there are many captures. You can of course just move this rook somewhere. You can move this rook somewhere. There are many moves. You can just capture the rook on d8. But most of these variations would just lead to an equal position, and rook a1 is the stunning move that white played. So what is the point of this move? You're going to look at it just now. So black has to take, queen takes, and king c8. Of course, king a8 would be a blunder, because then there's will be some sort of discover attack after knight d5, and black would lose his queen. So king c8, and now a4. So the idea is to basically push a5, and if white had played any other move, black would have the response a5. But now if he plays a5, white has the stunning move b4. If queen takes, then queen c7 is mate. So if pawn takes, now a5. And you might wonder why the rook is on a1. Well, if the rook was on b1 here, so after b4, white cannot really capture on a5 because the rook would be pinned. So that was the deep point behind rook a1. The knight was on d3, so obviously e1 and c1 are not available. Then d1 is problematic because of tactics. And finally, if you place this on b1, then suddenly you cannot even capture on a5. So the only squares were f1 and a1, but rook a1 makes a lot more sense because you kind of push the a5 pawn even if the queen was not on e5. So now here black probably realized his problem and he played c5 instead, but that doesn't really work for black, because after rook c1, queen d6, rook takes c5, king b8, knight takes d8, and rook takes d8, simply queen c3, and white is just a pawn up. And after a few moves, he basically landed up in a simply winning rook endgame. Black was forced to allow the trade of rooks, the trade of queen, sorry, and then after rook g7, rook d6, and this kept going on for a while. And now the white is still pawn up, but now he comes up with a very clever sequence of moves. Can you see this? Can you pause the video and think for a while? What should white play the next couple of moves? And black simply resigned. You pause the video and think for a while. So again, it's the classic rook principle, rook behind the passed pawn. So you play rook e2, and after a5 you play f4, a4, and rook f2, and now the rook is protected, so you can capture on a3 if black were to play a3, and now the pawn is going to head towards f8, and it's completely winning for white. This was a very interesting attacking play by white, because first of all, he did simplify the position to a large extent, but even then he kind of kept playing in an equal position. He had many captures, he could have exchanged pieces, but then this rook move to a1 is just kind of the icing on the cake. And this was an amazing attacking game by white, and it shows a deep point that after all of this, a4, black cannot play a5 because of b4, and this stunning move b4 gives white the advantage. So I hope you enjoyed this game. If you did, do like and subscribe and check out other content on the channel. We have plenty of interesting videos to choose from, and as always, do take care.